Go.
Good to go.
All right. Welcome everybody to our Provo Municipal Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. It is 5:34 p.m. And this meeting will be conducted via entirely electronic means. Due to the risks of public gatherings associated with the spread of COVID-19, Governor Gary Herbert has waived the anchor location and certain other requirements for public meetings and noticing as outlined in Executive Order 2020-01. The meeting will be available to the public for live broadcast and on-demand viewing at the Provo City Council YouTube channel. The council requests that attendees help maintain the decorum of the meeting by silencing electronic devices, being respectful to others, and please wait to speak until called upon by myself as the chair. In the current situation where the meeting is being held via Zoom webinar service and broadcast over YouTube, I remind you to turn off your mics when not speaking so as to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. I will start with a roll call and state the names of the council members who are present. At present, we have myself, George Handley, David Harding, Travis Hoban, Dave Shipley, Dave Sewell, Shannon Ellsworth, and Bill Fillmore. And we, of course, have our Mayor Michelle Kafusi, and our Chief Administrative Officer, Wayne Parker, and other staff associated with the administration and with the council. We're grateful to have everybody here. We'll begin with an opening prayer, and that will be offered by Councilor Travis Hoban, after which we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dixon Holmes.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful that we can come together as public servants. We ask thee to bless this time we have, that we'll be led to make the right decisions for the people of Provo, for this great city. We're grateful for the city, for those other public servants and leaders that we have. We ask you to please guide us through this turbulent time with COVID-19. Bless those who are in need of support, and bless the people of our great city with health and safety. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Dixon, why don't you lead us?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much, Dixon. We appreciate that. I did want to announce that it is a special day for one of our staff members today. Elizabeth Vanderwerken is celebrating her birthday today, and we want to wish her a very happy birthday and express our appreciation for all that she does. She is remarkable, and we would not be able to do what we do without her. So thank you, Elizabeth, and we wish you a very happy day today.
Thank you.
All right. Mayor Kafusi would like to make a presentation to the community, so we'll give this time to Mayor Kafusi.
Thank you, Council Chair Handley. I just wanted to take a few minutes just because it's such an interesting time in our city. Who would have ever thought we'd be in the middle of a pandemic, and yet alone an earthquake? It's just been a lot of craziness going on. But with that said, I wanted to just say a few words about how appreciative I am to everyone, not only the council members and our staff here, but the citizens. We've been working really hard, and we are showing up and doing the best we can to make sure your services are up and functioning, and trying to manage what is in my lane to manage, which are your services, resources, and facilities. I thought I'd just give a little bit of an update. So as of today, our total tests we've given out in the state are 18,513. Our total cases we have in Utah are 887. Our total hospitalized as of today about an hour ago are 73. Total deaths in our state are 5. And Utah County, in just Utah County, we have 71 cases. 70 of those are residents, and 1 of those is a visitor. I want to encourage everyone to get on provo.org. We have been working really hard on our community safety plan for COVID-19, and it is an ongoing plan and updated constantly. We have a 4-step plan, which is coordinate, communicate, mitigate, and then encourage calm preparedness. Most of all, I want to focus on how important it is to remain calm and to remain, just use common sense, I guess, is where I'm trying to take this. Practice calm concern, not only with ourselves and those in our immediate influence, but I also encourage you to stay calm and be a positive, shining star out there for your neighborhoods and your community. I mean, we're not able to engage and communicate, but yet I spot my neighbors, I look for them, I yell across the street to check on them, because that's what we do. I know emergencies can bring out the best and the worst in people, but I know Provo will come out of this stronger and better. So let's make sure that COVID-19 doesn't win this. We are good citizens. We know how to go through hard things. The majority of us come from a lot of strong pioneer stock, so we can do hard things, and we're not afraid of a little work. And that's the Utahn, that's the Provo way. And so again, visit our website at provo.org and just know that I'm here. I care about you. I get very little sleep because I'm so worried and trying to constantly think and do what's best for our community. But I feel a real responsibility to watch out for you and provide for you and take care of you. But let's all just make sure we all take care of each other in this pandemic and hang in there, and we'll come out on the other side. So thank you for allowing me a few minutes, Council, in your meeting tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. We're really grateful to you and grateful to all of our city folks in public safety, especially who are on the front lines of helping us with all of this. We thank you for your efforts and for your communication. I wanted to just second your thoughts for a moment to speak on behalf of the council to the community and express our love and appreciation at this difficult time. We recognize that there are a lot of people on the front lines, not only in our city who are working in public safety, but a lot in the health industry who are and will be making a lot of sacrifices in the coming days to keep us safe and as healthy as possible. So we thank them for their commitment. And again, we thank the mayor and her staff for their hard work in helping us to respond adequately and effectively to this crisis. And as a council, we're very grateful to our own council staff who've worked very hard to help us make this adjustment to an online format. And we ask for your continued patience and understanding as we seek to get this right and iron things out as we move forward. And there's, of course, a lot that we don't know and a lot of uncertainty that we're all asked to live with at this moment. But we do know a few things with certainty about this community. We know that we have hundreds of capable and caring people who work in and for this city who are vigilant and prepared for the kind of crisis. And we know that this is a caring community. And then we already know how to work to take care of the most vulnerable in this community. So please be mindful of those in our community who are affected by the loss of employment, whose businesses are threatened by the conditions that we're living under, and those who are going to have decreased access to assistance. Those were the same people who were especially vulnerable before COVID-19, but are even more so right now. And so those who were already struggling to make it from check to check, and those who are already socially isolated, or those who are already dealing with weak immunities and other health struggles, these are the ones who are maybe of more, not maybe, but definitely more serious concern to us now. So as a community, we hope we can show collective vigilance and humane concern and proactive assistance for every member of this community. So I just want to echo the mayor's call for being the best rather than the worst during these difficult times. Let us shine even more brightly as a community than ever before. I think with faith and love, the crisis will bring out the best of us. And so we send our encouragement out to you and state publicly as the council our commitment to do what we can to serve you better. And I would also say, as a council, we remain as committed as ever to be responsive to your concerns as elected officials. And as always, we're grateful for your voice, your concerns, and your input to help us do our best. So don't assume that anything has changed in that regard when it comes to our need for your voice. Even if the format has changed, we still remain readers of emails and answers of phone calls and any other methods that we have for you to communicate with us. We appreciate that. So, all right, we'll move on then to our first item on the agenda, which is a presentation of the 2020 census, and this will be presented by Javin Weaver, a Provo City planner.
All right, just making sure you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So hopefully by now, most residents within Provo City have received a invitation either by postcard and or by a letter to respond to the census. The census is live and up and going right now. It started on March 12th and is currently, you can go and take the census right now. If you go to 2020census.gov, it's going to take you to this site. I just want to walk you through some of the initial steps of this as you go through online, and a couple other items that have now come up.
Hey, John.
When you are at this page, if English is not your first language, you can go to the top right. There's a little drop-down menu, and you can select the language that best suits you. Once you've done that, you want to click on Respond Now on the green, and it's going to take you to the next page. I am unable to, thank you. It'll take you to this page, has a few informational things for you to look at and read over before you take the census. Once you're ready, you're going to click on the blue box that says Start Questionnaire. On the invitation that you may have received from the Census Bureau, there will be a 12-digit census ID number. That's what identifies your particular residence to the census. If you want to take the census and you do not have that number, that is okay. You can click below where it says if you do not have a census ID, click here. Otherwise, if you do, you input that number and click login. If you don't, go to the next page, please. It'll have you answer a couple additional questions. So for purposes of this demonstration, I clicked I did not have a census ID. I clicked a US state, and then on the next page, I entered in the address of where I would be located. For this, I used City Hall. At the top, you do see a progression bar, address, household, questions, people questions, and final questions. That'll help you to be able to see the status of how far you are on the census. If for some reason you do not have a permanent residence due to certain circumstances, you can click the little box that says, I do not have a street address. And then it'll take you to a couple of other pages where it'll say on April 1st, which is tomorrow, where will I be approximately? So you could say 500 North Freedom Boulevard. I will be here on that intersection. And that's what you put. On the next page, thank you, it'll have you verify that address, whatever you put in, whether it's a physical address or a location address. And on the next page, it'll have you, this is where you started putting your information. So this could be, if it's just you just put one person in. If you have mom, dad, and children is where you'd put that. And then additional questions would be, how are these additional people related to you, whether they, however that is, whatever composition that is. The telephone number is if they have any questions, the Census Bureau can give you a call. Example, if you have a homeowner that lives upstairs, the property owners, and in the basement they're renting out to some students, they may not get a invitation to take the census, but the student couple in the basement may take the census, go online and do it. So they may have two, and the couple upstairs, the property owners may take the census. So then they would see two entries for the same household. If they have a question, they could call the number and see what the current situation was at that time. Why are there two entries? Same thing if you had 5 roommates in one apartment all fill out the census individually, not put their roommates in, they could have 5 entries for one address. And this is to help clarify that. Again, this information is not shared with any other organization. So that would be the sole reason why they would be calling you. If you get distracted while you're taking the census, there will be a pop-up window that'll come up and say that this session is going to reset itself due to inactivity. If that happens, on the next page, you will see it'll say the session has been terminated, and you will need to start all over from the beginning. There's no save, current status, etc. You have to go from the beginning. On the next page, if you go back to 2020census.gov, if you have any questions regarding COVID-19, if you just go down slightly on the homepage, on the left side, there is a box that says monitoring COVID-19, and you can click on that and see how the census is monitoring that. I am unsure at the moment if collecting census data will be extended past the original deadline. That's probably to be determined, as other things are. The next page. So this is particularly important for Provo. If you lived in Provo while attending school, but now have moved home, you should still count where you would have normally been living on for about April 1st, 2020. So if you should have been here, but due to the current circumstance, you aren't, still count Provo City. If you are a student and are still living here in Provo, you want to make sure that you put Provo for your current residence and not your hometown. Next page. There is still the option for those that do not have access to a computer that you can take the census at Provo City. Provo City has computers available at customer service that you can utilize. Customer service is located at 351 West Center Street, and they are open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And if you have any questions, anyone from the public is more than welcome to give me a call, email me, or you can go to 2020census.gov for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you, Javin. Appreciate it very much. We hope the community understands how important it is that we fill this out and we get accurate data for our community.
Definitely.
Thank you. All right, we have minutes from January 21st, 2020 council meeting. Are there any objections or requested changes to those minutes? If you wish to, please signify with the virtual uplifted hand on the screen. Seeing no objections, I declare the minutes approved by unanimous consent. I'll now turn the time over to Cliff Strachan, our Council Executive Director, who will have some instructions about how to make public comment. You're muted, I think.
All right, you should be able to hear me now.
Yes.
Because the City Council is meeting virtually by Zoom webinar and is being broadcast by YouTube, there are neither council members nor members of the public present at Provo City Hall. This necessitates certain changes in procedure for those members of the community who wish to make public comment during the public comment period or wish to be heard during the public hearings for those items requiring public hearings. Those items are numbers 2 through 5 of tonight's agenda. To facilitate those public comments, either during the 15 minutes set aside for public comment or for those items requiring a public hearing, we have enabled telephone access. I'm going to share those instructions now, and they should be showing on screen for the members of the public on YouTube. Brett, can we keep that on, the share, rather than my voice? One thing to remember is that there is about a 30-second delay from the webinar that the council members are participating in and the YouTube broadcast. And what that means is that we're going to have to allow a little bit longer as we pause and wait to find out if there are callers wishing to comment. The instructions are on the screen, and they can call in for those, and it'll take a few seconds on for that. So there are several telephone numbers to call. They can be found on the YouTube page, and I see they're being broadcast shown right now, and at provocitycouncil.com. That's not the normal city page. That is provocitycouncil.com. Toward the bottom of that page, there is a whole list of numbers that you actually can see on the screen right now. Callers may have to try multiple numbers to get connected. When a caller is connected, they will be required to, 1, enter the meeting ID, which is the listed webinar ID, and enter the pound symbol. And 2, it'll ask for a personal ID number, which you won't have, and it'll tell you just to enter the pound symbol. The phone system will then ask for that number and enter pound. The caller will now be able to hear the meeting while waiting to be called upon by the chair, who will identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. For those wishing to make public comment, this is the method for people to do so during the council meeting. Now, callers will enter as attendees and will have their microphones muted. If you wish to speak to an item, press *9. That's press *9 to indicate your desire to comment, and then wait to be called upon. Each of you will be asked to provide your name and city of residence before making your comments. Each will be given up to 2 minutes to speak. A timer will be posted on screen, and a beep should be audible to the caller when their time is up. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain items prior to council action. After each item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. Given the 30-second delay, if you want to speak to those items, you might want to get in the phone queue early. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 15 minutes total. At this time, 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. As normal, during any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Additional time may be given to individuals specifically invited to speak, such as applicants, neighborhood chairs, or others that may be representing additional persons. As always, that's at the discretion of the chair. Again, please call in if you desire to call. Begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken on this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. And just a reminder that there is a 30-second delay, and we'll provide extra time for that. And for those of you that are calling in, you will want to mute your YouTube broadcast and listen to the audio through your phone. Mr. Chair, I turn the time back to you.
Thank you, Cliff. So we're needing that 30-second delay right now, right, to allow anyone who would like to make public comment that is not relevant to any of the specific items on our agenda tonight. So we
Correct. And I would recommend you just give it a minute, and another about 45 seconds should do it.
Okay. And am I correct in remembering that Karen or somebody else is aware of when someone is calling?
Yes, Karen's monitoring that and should be-
Correct. I'm watching. No one has shown a raised hand yet. So if one raises, then we'll attend to it. But for now, no one's raising a hand. So they may be here for specific items and not for general public comment.
And a reminder then to also to the residents that emailing the council at council@provo.org is also a good way to comment and provide information feedback to the council members. Okay, that's over a minute.
All right, we will move on then to our action agenda, an implied motion. This is item number 2, an implied motion on a resolution to amend the Planning Commission bylaws to permit electronic public hearings. This has citywide application, and this will be presented by Aaron Ardmore. Go ahead, Aaron, if you want to unmute yourself, or I can do it. Well, let's see, it's not letting me. There you are.
Now,
Yep.
thank you. This item was brought before us as a continuation of the governor's executive order, allowing the work of cities to go on with COVID-19. It was allowed through the Planning Commission last week. They recommended approval, and the language is there in front of you, and it's pretty simple to understand. But if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for Aaron? All right, no questions for you, Aaron. I don't see. So, does any? Let's see.
Mr. Handley.
Yes.
I believe Ms. Ellsworth has a question or a comment.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I was raising my physical hand. I was trying to find the virtual button. I was just wondering if the Planning Commission was already able to meet electronically. They didn't have to come in, did they?
Yeah, so last week we did meet electronically with the Planning Commission. We were allowed to do that because of the governor's order, but this bylaw amendment protects us from any future meetings that we have to continue to do that way.
Okay, thanks.
Somebody might need to mute themselves. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. A little echo there. Okay, any other questions for Aaron? All right, we will ask for any public comment. And Karen and or Cliff can let me know how long we need to wait for that.
I just started the watch, so we'll watch it. A reminder to call-ins, if you are on the line and you want to speak, press *9 on your phone, and that will alert us that somebody wants to speak. Mr. Hanley, that would be a minute.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, does any council member desire to consider this item again at the next council meeting, or are we ready to approve this moving forward? Okay, I see no concerns, so I will call for a vote on the implied motion. I'll call for a roll call. Mr. Harding?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Fillmore? Oops, Mr. Fillmore, you were on mute.
Sorry. Yes.
Mr. Sewell,
Yes.
Mr. Hoban,
Yes.
Ms. Ellsworth,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay, so the voting is unanimous. We'll move on to an implied motion on item number 3, an appropriation of $2 million, $2,184,800 in the General Capital Improvement Fund to implement a new human capital management system. And this will be presented by Daniel Softly, and Division Director, HR, and John Borgett, Director of Administrative Services.
Here we go. It didn't give us much time. Okay.
You're good to go.
Okay, just 1 second here.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my screen. Just 1 second here. Sorry. Okay.
John,
Okay.
Is Daniel joining you?
Yes, Daniel's right here. I'm going to have Daniel give kind of an overview, and then I'm going to respond to a couple of questions from the funding and some questions that were asked in our previous meeting. So Daniel's right here with me, so I'm going to let him take over for a minute.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, thank you first for the opportunity to present this item. It's been an eventful 3 weeks since we last talked about this. The city and its residents and all the many businesses have been so busy adapting to all of our COVID-19 restrictions and changes. It's pretty easy to forget we also had that earthquake. And I suspect that as a result of those events, a lot of you have spent time thinking about the short and the long-term effect that these events can have on our city. Fiscal responsibility is always important, but it rightfully takes on heightened attention during times of uncertainty like this. So as I prepared to, give this presentation tonight, I gave a lot of thought to 2 questions about implementing a new HR system at this time. The first one is, can we even implement a new HR system remotely and by our deadlines in the event of continued travel or movement restrictions? And then the second one, the question that I have is, should we go forward with the project at this time? The first question I want to address is, can we implement the system in light of everything that's happening and the ability to have to do that remotely? We've had significant discussions with our preferred vendor on this subject, which is Workday. Their current model, the one that they use right now, is an 80-20 virtual on-site implementation. In light of all their travel restrictions, and they have clients in states that have shelter-in-place orders, they have transitioned their projects successfully to be 100% virtual. Workday is an online cloud solution. That's one of the things that we talked about 3 weeks previous. The advantage of that is the ability, by its very nature of its design, to be able to work remotely. And Workday is more than confident that we can do the entire project remotely and on time, and the implementations that they are currently underway are proving that out. So then probably the most important question is, should we go forward with the project at this time? From a functional standpoint, the events of the last few weeks have strengthened my convictions, at least, about the necessity of this project and the importance of quickly moving to a cloud solution that allowed businesses to be conducted remotely. Like all the other directors in the city, I've been spending the last couple of weeks trying to look at what functions we can do remotely and how we would handle that. Now, we are currently on an on-premise HR solution, so access to that from a home is still through virtual networks. Well, our ability to accomplish that while still maintaining security for the sensitive data that we maintain is going to have an impact on available resources. So, for example, you need to be able to connect to a city computer. Well, we have one laptop for the city, and that has functioned, or for the HR, and that has functioned very well for us because all of our business is conducted in our offices. In order to fully go remote now, we would have to purchase those, or we have to purchase optional virtual networks that we could use. All of those obviously take some time and expand on bandwidth and have licensing costs associated with those. To compare that as a contrast, Workday, the solution that we want to go, or at least a cloud solution, it's an easy as logging in online, and then you're able to be fully remote. From a budget standpoint, it is important to understand as you vote tonight that the realities of our current HR system have not changed. We are operating on an on-premise HR system that is unsupported, requires multiple third-party products to meet our needs. We have an unacceptable risk of system failure and are increasingly on our own to resolve system failures and issues as they come up, as more and more of our customer and user groups move away to online solutions. Conversely, in this last week, there's been a lot of movement going on, and that's really kind of shown me the value of having a very strong user group. Workday, for example, has an online collaboration product, and as the federal government has passed new laws in record time, they signed a Coronavirus Response Act on March 18th, and cities have now been scrambling to figure out a way to track that and manage that in their systems. The power of a large group, they've been able to start a thread, and they're all on the very same software, so they've been able to figure that out as a group. So that's really kind of reinforced the importance of that resource. And then lastly, the reality still remains that it costs the city more to maintain the status quo due to licensing costs, required upgrades, and the support needed to maintain our system. I'm still very much strongly in favor of moving forward. I believe it's in the best interest of the city short-term and long-term, and I appreciate your consideration on the matter and open to questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel or for John Borgett on this item?
No, I've got a couple.
All right.
John says he has a couple things he'd like to mention.
So, as a reminder from our last meeting, the recommendation on this proposal is a way to fund the implementation costs. The actual maintenance and ongoing costs of the system are very similar to the solution that we're on right now. So the challenge is just paying for those maintenance costs, which is $2,184,800. And we had recommended that first of all, we appropriate that money so that we could start the implementation now. And then we create an interfund loan between these funds that are listed here to provide the funding for that over a 5-year time frame. The one significant number that's listed there is the general fund, the $235,136, which the general fund, what we had talked about in our previous meeting is that would be funded through the general fund balanced budget that we deliver to the municipal council in May as a recommendation. And so one question that came up last time was if we could provide at this meeting kind of a little overview, or let the council kind of know what funding, how things are looking with the current budget, how much money are we likely going to have as we try to fund supplemental requests or other things similar to what we talked about earlier today on the vehicle replacement budget. And so as a follow-up, as you can see on this slide, we've been doing some work with the impacts of COVID-19. And I would even mention that now, as we all know, versus 3 weeks ago, it's even more of a significant threat and potential problem. And one of the council members had requested, and so I just listed up here at the top, what would be the impact if we were to have, for example, over a 6-month time frame or a 3-month time frame, what would be the impact of a 25% drop in sales tax or a 50%? And you can see that during that time frame, you've got some pretty significant impacts to sales tax. I don't think we expect to have that kind of impact, but we do expect to have some. And so as we've looked at the upcoming year, our sales tax estimates are lower because we're anticipating that there'll be some impact based on the potential recession that we're all expecting to see. One other thing that we've got listed down below is we went through and looked at our facilities right now that are currently closed, and we've made a conservative estimate. We're hoping this isn't the case, but our conservative estimate is, what if those facilities were closed through the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th? And you can see, based on that impact right now on revenues, we would be down roughly $3.3 million. Well, our staff at the rec center and also the library have went in and done some work and looked at what expenses could be minimized by those facilities being closed to minimize the impact of those decreased revenues. And we've came up with, and our administrative staff and the directors and over the different areas have came back and says we think we could save roughly $1.6 million through reductions in expenditures, but that still shows an impact of roughly $1.4 million that the general fund would and the city would be impacted by. And so one of the things that we're doing actively and pursuantly as an administrative staff is looking at ways to be proactive and ways that we can reduce expenses and offset that. As far as fiscal 21, we've been working avidly on the budget and going through the numbers, and I can just share with you what I do know. What I do know is that it's going to be a very difficult year to balance the budget. I would mention that we will balance the budget, and when we deliver the budget to the council in May, it will be balanced, but not without difficulty. As we've talked amongst the directors and the administration, we're likely going to not have money that's extra or that's available for supplemental requests. What we're going to be looking at likely is how we're going to balance the budget with our current resources and finding ways to make reductions so that we can balance it. Now, one of the things that we are committed to is, as we have each of the departments provide their supplemental requests, we're going to look at each supplemental request very seriously and evaluate it and have discussions with the directors and also the council on those. And there may be some of those that make sense to fund, and then it might make sense to make budget reductions in other areas to meet these important priorities. But the important message that I wanted to share and make sure that the council is aware of this is that with this recommendation for going ahead with funding and doing an interfund loan for these implementation costs for the HCM system, that $235,000, in order for the general fund to include that in their balanced budget, we're going to have to find some other reductions, which it can be very difficult to do. It may be necessary in this initial year, if the council is supportive of funding that interfund loan portion for the HCM implementation through an appropriation out of fund balance, or it's just going to be a challenge and a difficulty. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was transparent and made you aware of that before you go ahead and approve or consider approving this interfund loan and this appropriation. And I'm available to answer any questions.
All right. Before we open it up for any public comment, Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Mr. Borgett. I think we all appreciate just how difficult the current situation is to make a plan for the rest of the year and into the coming year. I'm always very comforted by having you at the helm of our team looking at finances and budgeting. So I know you're already working on this, but I think that uncertainty definitely is going to be ongoing throughout the entire budget process. But I do obviously encourage you and the city to look carefully at any opportunities that and help that the federal government seems to be trying to provide, as well as I guess more generally, since we're all here with the administration, but any help we can give to our small businesses locally. Some of this money has been appropriated, on the federal and state level, and a lot of it is first come, first serve. So whatever we can do to make sure we as a city government don't miss out, as well as our businesses. If there's anything we can do to help them know what options, what lifelines are available for them, I think that would be very helpful for our community.
And I would respond to that as well. I appreciate that, Councilman Harding, and I would just mention that we went to great length and spent a considerable amount of time with the Parks and Rec Division as far as keeping good records, being prepared so that if we do have opportunities for assistance through FEMA or through the federal government for reimbursement for some of these lost revenues and some of this financial impact to the city, we are being very meticulous and trying to make sure that we have our records such so that if that becomes or is available, that we would be able to submit for that. But in the meantime, we're also in the process of planning for being the most conservative. And so if for some reason we don't receive assistance, we've got a plan that can help us so that we're prepared for that fiscally.
Mr. Hoban.
John, I want to say, to echo what Mr. Harding said, I think we're in good hands. Looking at the kind of our emergency fund, so to speak, it's the highest it's ever been. So you couldn't have done a better job managing that. So great job there. You mentioned reductions. Do you know at a high level, are we looking at staff reductions at the city? Is it too soon for that question to be answered? Programs to be cut? You don't have to answer it now if you don't know, but I was just curious if you have an idea at this point what those might look like, even at a high level.
Well, I would just say that we met as a management team this morning and we had a brainstorming session. No decisions have been made. Of course, we want to pick solutions that can help us reach our objectives as a city, and we want to pick things that can help us so that we can continue to retain and keep our current employees. And so I would say to the public that we're just looking at all options and trying to pick the options that can help us have a balanced budget, but also help keep our employees and also help us reach our objectives.
All right, thank you, Mr. Borget. Let's see if we have any comments from the public on this item. Then I'll look to my staff to help me with this in terms of timing.
So we'll give it a minute and see if Karen recognizes any numbers to speak.
Yeah, there haven't been any with a raised hand. We just want to remind everybody that if you wish to make a comment on this item, please press *9, and then it'll show up on our screen and we'll know that you wish to speak.
Mr. Hanley, that's been a minute.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back to the council for any further discussion. Any discussion from the council on this item? Mr. Harding.
I just want to say these are difficult times. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I think they made a very good case for why this need isn't going away, why we will save money in the long run by moving forward with this, and why even in these difficult times it makes even more sense to move to a more robust solution. So it is very difficult to appropriate this kind of money at this time, but I do think we are well positioned with the fund that we have, and so I do feel comfortable moving forward with it.
Any other comment from the council or questions? Mr. Fillmore. You appear to be muted there, Mr.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I just want to be perfectly clear, John. If I'm hearing you right, you're saying that this is something you would have been recommending for its long-term benefits, even if we had not had a COVID-19 epidemic.
Yes, I am. I'm in support of it. I've been involved with it from the very beginning, and I'm supportive, and I agree with Daniel's challenges and what we currently have with our current system. I just want to make sure that the council is aware that that we are in a difficult climate, and we may need to come back and ask for an appropriation to service that first year's payment and even subsequent payments, but we'll make it a priority and do what we can. But I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of that. And the most importantly, I wanted to follow up with what I was asked to do in last meeting as far as giving kind of an honest assessment of where we're at on the budget and how this would impact it.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Ms. Ellsworth.
I'm ready to make a motion. I move that we adopt a resolution appropriating $2,184,800 in the general CIP fund for the implementation of a human capital management system, and authorize an interfund loan from the energy fund to the ERP Debt Service Fund as a funding source.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hoban. Mr. Hoban.
I just had a question. Is it appropriate to ask a question while there's kind of a pending motion, or?
Sure.
Okay. John, can you tell me again, what is our cost right now to maintain our current system? So I recognize long-term, it definitely costs us more to maintain the current system. I guess my question is it maybe, given the situation with COVID-19, should we maybe take a pause and say, let's see what we might have to look at from staff reductions and things like that, and cutting other programs? Do we maybe punt this a year and kind of go with the current system at a reduced cost, though it's maybe more overall long-term? We wouldn't want to continue this long-term, but instead of $2 million, what could we be spending next year to maintain the current system?
So I'll just kind of respond to that. And Daniel, if you feel like you want to throw in a point too, but this is the real challenge we have with our current system. As Daniel highlighted, it's an unsupported system. And so we're off of support, and we kind of keep it going on a day-to-day basis. And we actually have a third-party consultant that assists us with it too. And there's even some debate amongst Oracle on whether or not they should be supporting us. But if you were to talk to Josh Eyrig, who's our IS division director, he would say that if we were to have a server crash, or if we were to have some important circumstance, we may not be able to bring the system back up, which could create some challenges as far as providing, running payroll and other things. And so we're in a scary place right now, and we've been uncomfortable for some time. Is there a possibility that we could just keep it at its current level and not upgrade it and kind of go day by day and survive for another year? Yeah, there's a possibility, but I don't know. I don't think it's the prudent thing to do, and it's risky. It has some definite potentials for risk and uncertainty. But as far as the other costs, because what we would recommend is that if we weren't going to go to Workday, for example, when we were to stay with PeopleSoft, then what we really should do because of that risk is upgrade PeopleSoft. And the point with that is if we do that and upgrade to the newer version of PeopleSoft or Oracle, that's actually more expensive than going with this solution with Workday. And so that kind of highlights the issues and why it's critical. You got anything more to that, Daniel? Hold on, I'll let Daniel talk just for 1 second.
Yeah, I echo everything that John just said. As far as the question of what it costs to support the system that we're currently on, essentially the annual costs to support the system that we're currently on versus the one we want to go to is the same. And as John just stated, if we stay on PeopleSoft, it becomes imperative to upgrade to the next highest version, which would cost the exact same money. And because there is a move by Oracle to move everyone to their own cloud solution, that is only good for a few years. Just to kind of give some historical perspective on this, we started looking at making this change, not necessarily to Workday, but looking to move off our system. We first started investigating this back in 2010. We ultimately decided that time to supplement what we had with third-party systems, and we brought them online. That hasn't serviced us as well as we need, and we began in earnest 5 years ago to try and move off of our system because of the fact that this is essentially a sunsetting product that will not be supported and puts us at great risk for crashes. That effort, so we are basically, I guess I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to make is that this is a project that has been kind of moved down the road before, and it's extremely unfortunate that it comes at this particular time. But, it is a decision that I believe serves both the short and the long term of the city. I remember, last week, and when the building started shaking, the first thought obviously was, I hope it doesn't fall down on us. But shortly after that, the thought was, I'm really grateful that we've made a decision on the building when we did, because it shortens the time frame of the risk that we're involved. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I kind of feel that our software system is in that same situation.
Okay, great analogy. Thank you.
Mr. Sewell. Oh, you might be muted, Mr. Sewell.
Thank you. I'd like to second Councillor Ellsworth's motion and just make 2 quick points of order with regard to parliamentary procedure. I think it's best if there's a motion on the table to see if there's going to be a second before continuing discussion. That would be my suggestion. And the other is that we don't actually need a motion. It certainly no harm on this, but there is an implied motion on this item as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Yes, I was going to make that point earlier. However, the motion doesn't speak to the source of the funding, does it? In the specific way that Ms. Ellsworth's motion did.
It does, because the implied motion is to pass the resolution that's in front of you.
All right. Thank you for that clarification and that advice. I will take that advice happily. Did you want to make another comment, Mr. Sewell?
Yes, could you just clarify that? So did Mr. Jones say that there's a difference between the motion that Councillor Ellsworth made and the implied motion? And
No.
if there is, no, okay.
I was trying to point out that there isn't. The issue here is that the title in the chair notes was not updated to reflect the actual title of the resolution itself.
Okay.
So on your agenda, it looks like it doesn't talk about the funding, but the resolution itself does talk about the funding.
That explains it. Okay, Ms. Ellsworth, I saw a hand up, but I guess that's gone. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of that motion? All right, I'll call for a vote on that motion, and I will do that by roll call. Mr. Sewell,
Yes.
Mr. Harding,
Yes.
Mr. Fillmore,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Hoban,
Yes.
Ms. Ellsworth,
Yes.
and George Handley. I will vote yes. So that is a unanimous vote to pass that motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Softly and Mr. Borgett, for your time. We'll now move on to item number 4. This is an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 0.34 acres of real property generally located at 164 South, 400 West from residential conservation, RC, to low-density residential, LDR, in the Franklin neighborhood, and this will be presented by Aaron Ardmore. Aaron present?
Stand by.
I'm not seeing him.
He should be now.
Thank you.
Oh, there we are.
Am I there? Okay. So what I want to do tonight is kind of introduce you to the proposal as was presented at Planning Commission, and then try to address a couple concerns or comments that have come to staff since last week's Planning Commission. So if I have the screen here, let's see. If we could go to the next slide, John. So here's the area. It's very close to us at City Hall. So 400 West on the east, 100 South on the north, 200 South on the south. It's large property. And currently there is just a vacant, dilapidated home. Next slide, please. Here's the proposal that goes with the zone change. The proposal is a low-density residential zone, which would allow these 3 units to be built on the property. The important thing to note here is the front unit, Unit 1, it would be facing the street, just like every other single-family residence on the street and within the neighborhood, having a front facade towards the street with off-street parking for it, and then the other 2 units back behind off a shared drive. So to the street, you're just seeing that single Unit 1. Next slide. Here's a zoom in of that. You can see here that they're meeting the off-street parking standards for the LDR zone. So they have 3 per unit, plus some. Next slide. And here you see the concept. So Unit 1 here is the unit that would be facing the street with its off-street parking. It's a 2-story home. Then Unit 2 and Unit 3 would be tucked in behind. Unit 2 is a single garage unit. Unit 3 is conceptual as a 2-car garage unit. So each single-family dwelling, detached, but on the same lot. So if you go back a slide, you could see that they would be each their individual units with shared open space. I believe the developer doesn't plan on any fences between the units. It's just kind of a shared open space concept with HOA. And then go advance the slide again, please. So I can just leave it on that while I go through some of these questions that have come up since the Planning Commission. The neighborhood chair and the applicant were made aware of some concerns that came up since the Planning Commission hearing, and I think part of that was due to the format of that Planning Commission was the same as this through Zoom and YouTube. where people either didn't understand how to come and comment or felt like there wasn't time to comment. But I just want to reassure the council that this did go through the process. The neighborhood meeting was held on March 4th. At that time, the idea was that the neighborhood that was aware of the meeting was generally in favor of the zone change. I have an email from the neighborhood chair on March 17th indicating such. So in addition to that, there was the posting of the sign on the property and the postcards that go out to 500 feet surrounding the property. On that post on the property itself and on those postcards, it stated that there would be 3 single-family residences proposed with this zone change. So just wanted to kind of allow the council to know that this still did go through the normal neighborhood process. Another concern was that in staff's recommendation for approval, the general plan and neighborhood plan were not fully recognized. Now, the neighborhood plan is an extension of the general plan. However, it doesn't go from property to property specifically. It kind of gives a vision of what the neighborhood wanted to see. I myself was the planner that kind of authored that with the neighborhood a number of years ago, and I'm aware of the recommendation for this block in Franklin. But as staff looked at this concept, we determined that the public purpose that it meets in the general plan is to provide more affordable and diverse housing options in the city, and specifically for this neighborhood. Now, Franklin neighborhood is very diverse, but we thought that the images you're seeing up on the screen allowed this kind of extraordinary property in relation to Franklin. It's an oversized property, but it would allow better utilization of such a large property in the neighborhood. In addition to that, its adjacency to downtown was a determining factor in recommending approval. As it went in front of the Planning Commission, we heard comments about its encouraging development of various types of housing without creating incongruent housing types. So we felt that the housing proposed was very congruent with the neighborhood. So for these reasons, we went ahead and recommended approval. The Planning Commission agreed with this finding and recommended approval to you for the zone change and approved the concept plan. So that's kind of where we're at with it now. I understand that the developer has been meeting with the people that have concerns over the past couple of days and has offered his time to try to address some of these concerns through Zoom meetings and through face-to-face chats. So maybe he'll be able to address some of these questions and concerns as well. But that's all I have for now. And council, if you have any questions for me, I'll try to answer those.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Ardmore before we speak with the developer and then open it up for public comment? Mr. Harding.
Thank you. Can we, whether now or in a few minutes, can we get a visual of the future land use map or future zoning map from the Franklin neighborhood plan? Can we pull that up just so we can see that and discuss that a little bit later?
Aaron, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Just go back to the neighborhood plan issue. I remember the presentation. I remember the neighborhood plan and thought it was quite well done. We did receive some feedback that this proposal was against the neighborhood plan or was not in harmony with it, that it was essentially rewriting the neighborhood plan. So I'm just asking for further clarification on that issue. You're saying that this particular unit and this particular block, in your view, the neighborhood plan wasn't specific enough. I mean, I know and understand there's nothing binding about the neighborhood plan, but I remember thinking the neighborhood plan seemed to show quite a sophisticated understanding and buy-in to how to help the city develop over time in a way that was also consistent with the neighborhood's interests. So I, like I say, I quite liked it, but I guess what I hear you saying is that the neighborhood plan wasn't as specific in regards to this particular property to properly call this out of bounds with those intentions. Is that?
Let me try to address that. So as John's trying to bring up the map, I can tell you that the neighborhood future land use plan had this block as a R16A for the future. Okay. Currently being RC, that wasn't much of a change from RC to R16A. It's essentially the same uses, single family residential detached with accessory apartments permitted. So yes, it addresses it. There were through working that neighborhood plan, there was a different council at the time, but if you recall, through any of those meetings, staff was trying to recommend low density residential as a buffer from the downtown areas into the neighborhood. There were a few in the advisory panel from the neighborhood that didn't like that. So those were changed to be more of a single family R1 zones. But like you say, in the context of this particular lot, its adjacency to downtown, the proposal before us, we thought that still kind of followed the spirit of R16A. You've got 3 homes, single family detached homes, on a large lot. In R16A, you could do 2. You could do your single family, and you could do your detached accessory apartment. So staff didn't feel like the additional 1 unit on this side of the property was really incongruent, I guess, with what the neighborhood plan recommends.
So if you had an accessory apartment, and it could be a detached accessory apartment on this lot. That's correct. You would have, essentially 2 households with cars and higher density population than you would with just a single detached home with no accessory apartment, obviously.
Right.
Okay, and these are smaller units, right? How many square feet are each of these units?
Maybe the applicant could address that. I would have to do some calculations real quick.
All right, I can wait and ask that of the applicant unless there are any other questions for Aaron from the council. All right, maybe if the applicant would be willing to answer that question, is he available?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, wonderful.
I think I was just plugged in. Yeah, the rough square footage, each floor about 700 to 750, and there'll be basement, main floor, and second floor. So overall, roughly 2,200 square feet.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Slater from the council?
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Slater?
Yeah, let me just take a couple minutes. First of all, I want to thank the planning department, particularly Aaron, planning commission, and council members for considering our plan. We've been working on this for quite some time. Just to give you a little background on me, I moved from Provo River Bottoms, where I raised my family for 25 years. We moved to downtown with the purpose of helping gentrify the area, and we found an area that needed a lot of help. This is very much a blighted area of downtown, but we saw the potential. So we bought a 115-year-old house right next door to the subject and completely remodeled it. And so basically, we'll be living next door to the subject. We have a definite vested interest in this project. When we moved into downtown, into the urban area downtown, I got involved with the city. I'm the treasurer of Bike Walk Provo. I'm also on the mayor's sustainability committee. My company raised money for Provo City to install 23 electric vehicle charging stations. I mean, we're involved in the city. We're very much sensitive to the vision of the city. So just want to make note of that. And then lastly, there's been some rumors that we misrepresented the project. Like Aaron said, we followed every step. We had a neighborhood meeting. Everybody was invited. Nobody came. Like in any project, there's a lot of discussion about what may be, what could be. We've talked about single family with an accessory. We've talked about 2 homes. We've talked about 3 homes. People hear what they want to hear, and that's what they remember. And so anyway, just want to clarify, we've done everything we can to be transparent completely on this project and not haven't hidden anything. There's anyway, some misunderstanding there. I just want to straighten out.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. Any questions for Mr. Slater? All right, thank you. We'll open it up for public comment. I note there are 2 hands already, 3 hands raised, and I'll rely on Karen to assist us in facilitating their questions or comments.
Okay, so we'll go with the caller whose phone number ends in 0753. Please remember to state your name and your city of residence. Go ahead.
Hello. My name's Matt Taylor. I live at 414 South, 400 West. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Thank you. Just a couple of notes tonight that I'd like to speak to. One of the concerns to me is that there was extensive public input on the Franklin neighborhood plan. The area in question, especially along 100 South, where it was proposed to be LDR, was an issue of several council meetings before it was finally adopted and was subsequently removed. So with that amount of previous discussion, this was not just a random change or a last minute change. I'd also note that the concern is that this neighborhood plan, which is more recent than the general plan in its adoption, is a guiding policy. It's part of the general plan, and it was not acknowledged in the staff report or, as far as I can know, the planning commission meeting. And that's a concern. There are times it's certainly appropriate for staff to have a differing opinion. But when they do have a different opinion, it should be acknowledged that their opinion is differing from an adopted plan. And so at a minimum, I'd respectfully request that this goes back to planning commission, just so the planning commission can have a discussion about this plan in context and a comparison of what the plan would allow, R16A. And the reason it was proposed to be R16A is because RC doesn't allow for subdivisions versus the LDR, and allow the planning commission to make a recommendation on whether you should deviate from that guidance. Additionally, there was a lot of issues with the planning commission. I understand visually, I've been told. I don't know personally. And so I think it's another reason to send it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate it. Karen, we go to the next person.
Yes. Okay, so we have the caller whose number ends in 1772. Remember to state your name and city of residence. Go ahead.
My name is Manon Ditmar, and I live in Cedar Hills. I work in the Provo area, and I'm familiar with the area that's being proposed to have these homes built, and I just wanted to show my support for any improvements. And this plan seems like a big improvement to me for the area to help increase value and bring homes and families to that area of Provo that, in my opinion, need the extra help.
All right, thank you very much. One more that I see.
Yes. So the caller whose number ends in 3970, please remember to state your name and city of residence.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Aaron Oldham. I live in Orem, but I own real estate in the downtown Provo area, specifically in the Mazer district. And I'm also a real estate agent who specializes in downtown Provo real estate and have sold properties there. But I want to note that I have no financial interest in this project or am not involved. But I am calling to support the project. I do respect long-term planning commissions and have been on several boards on the Mazer district and respect all the work that goes into those plans. But do think that exceptions can and should be made. And that's why they allow for overlay zones with good consideration. I think this project has a lot of merit with strengthening the southwest portion of Provo, which generally, from a real estate perspective, has not been as generally desirable as, say, the east side of Provo, the east, north, and southeast quadrants. I think this is the best use of that land. I am familiar with the project, and I see it as a positive in bringing new construction that fits the style of the neighborhood and allowing for good rental options in housing that is in good condition. Now, there's a lot of rentals in downtown Provo, and a lot of landlords live out of state, and they don't maintain the properties as well as those that are in state in a lot of cases. And that's, of course, my opinion. And I think this project will allow for higher quality, good rental properties in the downtown area, which will also support the growing downtown commercial area and the money that the city puts in on nonprofit and for-profit purposes. So I just wanted to voice those thoughts and support to the project.
Thank you, Mr. Oldham. All right, any other public comment? Do we need to wait the obligatory minute here to allow for anyone else to make a further comment?
Mr. Chair, I don't think another minute's necessary unless you just wanted to give last calls in.
All right. Well, so you're saying no time at all? We don't need to add any more time?
No, the reason we were given a minute before was simply to allow people to call in. The fact that we've had about 6 minutes of comments means that people have had an opportunity to call in during that time.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I'm willing, of course, to be flexible with a new format if something pops up in the next little bit. But let's move on back to council discussion then. Any discussion among the council or questions for Aaron or for Mr. Slater? Mr. Harding.
Sorry, did you call on me?
Yes.
I might have lost my audio. Can someone speak?
I am speaking to you, but are you not hearing?
Okay, I think my earbud just went out for a moment. Everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't necessarily have to go first, but I do have some thoughts on this. So let's see. Up on the screen right now, page 15 of the Franklin Neighborhood Franklin Neighborhood Plan, and it does show, this area in particular is shown as being R16A. There are other areas that are specifically shown as LDR. As was discussed earlier, the original proposal was for some of these areas that are R16A were proposed to be LDR, and that was changed. Just really quickly, right now it is zoned RC, which would allow just the single unit, and possibly with an accessory, which, as long as there's a homeowner in the first one, functions almost like 2 units. If we were to follow the plan and rezone this as R16A, it could be subdivided, and then there could be 2 main units, and then again, if owner occupied, and if they take advantage of our accessory overlay, could get an additional 2-ish units to move that up to 4. If we were to rezone it to RDL as is recommended to us, it could fit the 3 single-family detached as being proposed, or size-wise, 5 townhomes could be built there. So if the council did want to rezone this as RDL, but if we wanted to make sure that that it was built with 3 single-family detached and not 5 townhomes, we might need some assurances that's somehow that would remain at 3 single-family detached. Let's see, looking for my notes. So I'd love to go on record to say that I really like the proposed plan. I like the 3 single-family detached. I love that the front unit addresses the street, and for most of the people passing, it would not look any different. It wouldn't look out of place. It would just look like a nice house that fits in the area and is up against the road. And I think that's just some great design. And anyway, so I really like this plan. I also want to go on the record to say that I voted against the Franklin Neighborhood Plan. It was almost 4 years ago, and had a few people upset at me for voting against it. But I voted against it specifically because, and I believe the staff went along, their original recommendation was LDR. The staff then kind of as a concession said, well, we're willing to go along with the idea of putting this as R16A on the map and coming down from RDL. I didn't think that was the right choice. I think that our LDR is a better buffer between here. And I voted against it because of that reason. Now, notwithstanding those 2 points, we are here being asked to vote, and I thoroughly respect Mr. Ardmore's professional opinion. But the way I see it, we are being asked to make a zone change that is not in alignment with the adopted planning document for this area. I do feel that LDR is not R16A, and even though I think this is a good project and should go forward, I am not willing to vote against the current plan, as well as against what appears to be, the neighborhood, the neighbors that are most close to this. If they're against it and it's against the plan, I'm not willing to vote against that. I would not have a problem if we wanted to go back and update this neighborhood plan to open that up more to LDR or to another buffer or something along those lines. But until that's done, I'm not willing to vote against the plan like that. I have been communicating with the applicant as well as some of the near neighbors, and I'm hopeful that they might be able to find a middle ground or something that can work for everyone. I appreciated Mr. Handley's comment earlier that, you know, with R16 and with the accessory apartments, particularly now that we have detached accessories, you know, if we move this to R16A, there could be actually 4 structures there. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. I did make allowance for a little bit of flexibility just for the newness of our technology, and we do have one more comment from the public. So I'd like to just break with precedent here and allow that extra comment for 2 more minutes before we continue the conversation. So this is phone number 8185.
Heidi, remember to mute your YouTube there and state your name and city of residence.
Yes, my name is Catherine Smith. I live in Provo City. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I do know that there's actually one other person. She's the next door. She's next door to that lot who's been waiting to comment. I'm not sure why she's not been able to get through, but her name is Heidi Green. But I'll just state, you know, my opinion on this. One point is that I actually was not informed about any kind of neighborhood meeting before this went to the planning committee. I wasn't contacted. I've never talked to Rob Slater. I attended a secondary neighborhood meeting that happened just a couple of days ago. It was a Zoom meeting. But I guess my concern is just the same thing that Matt brought up, is that if there's a neighborhood plan where it's supposed to be a little bit lower density than this proposal would allow, then these homes are going onto much smaller lots than is allowed by the neighborhood plan. And I think all of us in the neighborhood, we like the lower density nature of this neighborhood, and this plan is just kind of packing a lot of homes into a pretty small space. That adds, you know, 3 homes and 3 families and potentially 6 cars to one side of the street, my street. And I'm just hoping that maybe this can go back to the Planning Commission, as was already suggested, just so that we can come to maybe a compromise instead. I'd probably be fine with, you know, maybe 2 homes, but I think 3 is too many to pack into that lot. And I just don't think that, you know, if the city makes an exception in this case, then it could happen again and again, where people are subdividing their properties and we're ending up with just too many homes packed into this neighborhood.
Thank you very much. There was, is Heidi Green available to make a comment? You said she's been waiting, but I don't see anyone.
Right. I've been trying to tell her on YouTube to do the *9 on her phone so it raises her hand, because we have several people listed and I can't begin to guess which one she is.
Oh, there's a hand.
Karen,
there we go.
Ask? Okay, never mind.
Hold on. Heidi, is
Council.
Yes. Is this Heidi?
This is Heidi.
Awesome, thank you. Remember to state your full name and city of residence.
And let's start.
Okay, thank you. My name is Heidi Green, and I live in Provo. I'm in the house adjacent to this property. I live 2 doors down from the Slaters. I think it's worth using some of my time to tell you thanks. I'm grateful that we can be in a country where we can say, protect our homes. And that's actually how I feel about this. I live in a very, very small home. It's a one-level home. It's 580 square feet, and I'm raising my children here alone. I purchased it 2 years ago to kind of get our feet under us. And so, not making an emotional plea, I recognize that I'm very uneducated in this process, and I've been learning a lot about it the past couple of days. But I am highly passionate about what happens in this decision. So I have 3 points. Catherine mentioned this. There are a lot of neighbors that are now speaking up, saying, how are we supposed to know about a meeting? So from what I understand, it was posted on Facebook, and we now know we need to be part of that group. But that's not something that was shared with us. And that's proper protocol, and I understand. However, it was referenced at least 3 times in the planning meeting, as well as watching the video that I'm quoting, that I spoke to the whole neighborhood. This is by Rob, and it was all positive. So when I heard that, I afterward talked to neighbors, and it was not all positive. They were not aware and were quite frustrated with it. As well as watching the planning committee, what was presented was not what was spoken of here in our community with Slaters, who I truly love, and I feel conflict in voicing these opinions. The second piece is that I really do hope we can find families that will come here to stay. I was warned that the education system was not something I should put my kids into, and I'm an educator, and I think we need to support that. And the third one, I'll speak quickly, is just that I should be able to live in a home that looks like it did when I bought it 2 years ago. I'm renovating it for my kids and I, and these are the 3 two-story homes are 10 feet from my property line in my tiny little house, so they will be dwarfing over me. They're only 15 feet apart, so they're very close to each other, and I think that that is too many homes in this lot. So I hope I did that quick enough. Thank you so much.
So much. Okay, excellent. All right, we'll bring it back to further council discussion. Thank you. Any other comments from the council? All right, maybe I'll say something. I'm a little confused about why there's a difference. Well, okay, let me. I guess LDR technically is quite different as a zone, but in this particular case, it's been noted, it 3 single detached homes with only one facing the street is only very slightly different than 2 single detached homes with accessory dwelling units that could be accompanying those. So the zoning difference here suddenly becomes rather fishy or squishy to me. I guess the main concern I have is if we rezone it to LDR, I trust Mr. Slater's intentions and so on, but what are the sort of mechanisms of ensuring that the kind of development we end up with is in fact what we assumed was going to go in, since the zoning actually could allow for even higher density than what is being proposed. So I don't know if Mr. Jones has some help on that, or Mr. Ardmore. But I'd like to know what kind of assurances we would have that if we did approve it, it would actually end up being what we hoped it would be.
Chair Handley, responding to that, I mean, at this point in time, I'm not aware of any assurances that we have at all, right? I mean, as is usually the case with rezones, approving the rezone means that once approved, that just means that anything that fits in the zone can go onto the property. The usual way for handling concerns about that is if the developer feels like they want to, they can always proffer a development agreement where they can attach the site plan and say, in exchange for the zoning, we promise that this is what we'll build, and that gets recorded on the property, so that's the only thing that can be built. But I'm not aware of a proffer at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sewell, do you have a comment? Or sorry, Ms. Ellsworth was previous.
Yeah, I think overall this is a smart project. I think the form and massing are appropriate for the neighborhood. I think it provides an important housing type for our community. It's not an apartment, and it's not a giant home with five or six bedrooms on a third of an acre. So I appreciate that it's bringing a diverse housing type to our community. And it's not just fixing up an old house, which is good and fine, but it's creating housing stock that has a different timeline than other houses around it. So not all the homes will deteriorate on exactly the same time frame, but they will have different lifespans, because this one is new and some of the other ones are a little bit older and some are even older. So I appreciate that diversity. Hopefully there was a sign put out on the property. I'm sure staff will confirm that. Usually when there's a zone change, they put out one of those yellow signs that lets neighbors know, hey, this is going to be on the agenda for Planning Commission and City Council. And yeah, I think this is a smart zone change.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sewell.
I'm concerned about the mismatch with the neighborhood plan. And I thought Mr. Taylor made a good point that if there is going to be a recommendation to do something different, that the plan should at least be discussed, and the reasons why there's going to be why a deviation is recommended should be discussed. I'm not convinced that LDR is the right zone. The project itself looks good. Excuse me. This isn't a good time to be coughing, but in my mind, I'm trying to separate this decision from the project, since there is no development agreement proffered at this point. In my mind, I'm potentially seeing 5 townhomes on the property, and so I would not be in favor of changing the zone to LDR at this time. I also had a little concern about the reference to the HOA. I know that HOAs can be fragile, and I don't have experience with HOAs this small, and I just wasn't sure if 3 provides critical mass for an HOA that would be need to be funded and charged with maintaining a common area. So that was, I guess, more of a question, since I'm not sure if that's viable or not.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore.
I just feel to concur with Ms. Ellsworth's comments. I thought that was a good summary of things, and I concur with that. My only concern is the alleged inadequacy of the notice, and I wonder if Aaron can comment on that for us and give us some reassurance that it was properly noticed to the neighborhood.
I can, if you allow, Mr. Hanley.
Yes.
So yes, postcards were sent out to mailing addresses on the county site, 500 feet buffer from this property in question. And then I did post a yellow public notice sign a week before the Planning Commission hearing on the property.
Was that taken down, or to your knowledge, was it up the entire week?
To my knowledge, it was up in the entire week. There's a warning to not take it down, but sometimes that does occur. So who's to know?
Was there anything about the COVID-19 restrictions that affected the ability to get input from the community at the time of the meeting?
Not that I'm aware of. Terry McCabe did alert me that there was a neighborhood meeting held and posted the video on the Facebook page for those that were not able to make it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I think I'll just add one more thought of my own. I really like this project. I'd love to see it there. But I do have reservations about the lack of any assurance that we wouldn't end up with something very different than what's being proposed. I do have some, and I do have some reservations about at least the perception of inadequate noticing, although it does sound to me like frankly, this happens almost every single time that there's a concern that there wasn't adequate posting, but that seems to have been it's a small enough neighborhood and a small enough group of people that should have been noticed about it, and a large enough people who have said, I found out about this very late and haven't had an opportunity, and what was represented in the report doesn't seem to reflect that. So those are concerns of mine. So I'd hate to see this project not happen, because I do like it quite a bit, but I'd like it to be done properly with assurances that it will be the project that will go in, and that people feel like there has been adequate opportunity to discuss. Other comments or questions or feedback from the council? This is an implied motion. Does any council member desire to consider this item again at the next council meeting? Mr. Harding.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually what I wanted to get at. I think we've been talking about maybe making some procedural changes, but I believe really right now, the way that we set it up is, anything that's not just routine should be continued, and so I'll happily be the person that says that I don't want to vote on this tonight. I would like to request that we continue at least the 2 weeks, and if I could just reiterate, I like the project, but I do not like, and I disagree that it aligns with the neighborhood plan, and I do feel like if we're going to rely on a planning commission recommendation and staff recommendation, I'd like to see both of those consider the neighborhood plan explicitly and state why they feel that a zone that's not recommended in the plan is recommended to us. So whether that can take place in the next 2 weeks, or whether anyway, so that's my request.
Ms. Ellsworth.
Oh, I would just be surprised if, well, and maybe we can ask Mr. Ardmore this. I mean, did he just toss the neighborhood plan out the window, or it looks like it's compatible with the image that was on the screen for the low density, even if it's not exactly for that parcel. It does seem like it fits. So I don't know. What do we want to do differently next time that we haven't already done?
Mr. Ardmore, do you want to respond?
I feel like I've addressed some of that tonight, but I'd be more than happy to send out a memo to the council if this was continued to your next hearing. I'd be more than happy to prepare a memo and send that out to all of you, addressing that particular point of the Franklin neighborhood plan and staff's recommendation of approval.
Okay. All right. So we have the request for the item to be continued, which it is automatically done by virtue of policy. Any further comments from the council? Any further instructions about what we would need to learn more in the interim? All right. So that does not require any vote, correct? Like, we can move on. All right.
That is correct. You can do that by council rules. I will advise that all of the speakers have sent you emails, and you'll have a chance to review those. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Slater also contacts you.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you for the feedback from the public and for Mr. Slater and Mr. Ardmore. We'll look forward to revisiting this item at a future meeting. We'll continue then to our last item, an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code to allow for permeable driveways and parking lot services. This has citywide application, and this will be presented by Austin Taylor, our Provo City Planner. Is Austin available? I don't see him on the list. Does anybody know?
I just promoted him, so he should be available to you now.
Okay, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, congratulations on your promotion.
Oh, thank you. I'm now a panelist. Okay, so John, will you be clicking through the slides?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as my job title suggests, I deal with parking and sustainability issues, and this is one of the rare moments that we're dealing with both things at the same time in City Code. So can you click, John? Our current code states that every parking space, whether it's on a driveway or in a parking lot, must be paved with either asphalt or concrete. So click. And what happens oftentimes, can you click on that image, John, see if it plays? Okay, well, that's a video of a flood that we had in 2013, and people are wakeboarding in a parking lot just because the water couldn't infiltrate and the pipes got clogged. And so what we ended up with was basically a really shallow lake in a parking lot, which was fun for a time, but not the best thing for the environment. Can you click next? If this would play, this is a dump truck dumping water onto a parking lot that has permeable asphalt. And if we were to see the video, the water just goes right down into the soil through the asphalt. Next. And the image on the left shows when water hits parking lots and it gets infiltrated through the soil, the pollutants that are left on the parking lot, things like oil from the cars, get filtered. And so what ends up in our aquifer is clean water. The image on the right is what's happening currently, which is once the water hits the driveways or the parking lots, it collects that pollution and it sends it into our stormwater system. From there, it goes into the Provo River, and then it heads off into Utah Lake. So if we are to get more permeable surfaces, like the image on the left, then we could both let water naturally infiltrate into our aquifer down below, and then also reduce pollution that ends up in the river and the lake. Okay, next. So the proposed code would allow for these types of surfaces in driveways and parking lots. It would allow for permeable pavements, like I showed you, brick pavers, stabilized gravel, and I'm going to show examples of all these things next, grasscrete or similar materials as approved by the Development Services Director. There were some concerns about if someone were to have a gravel driveway or a gravel parking lot, that gravel would end up on sidewalks and streets. And so we've made sure that if they're building this way, they have to have a certain size of stone that doesn't get caught in car tires, and be built with a paver grid, which is basically a big metal sheet or metal grid that's rolled out, and it has holes in it, and as you dump the gravel in, it goes into those holes, so the metal grid holds it in place. On letter B there, the fire department wanted us to specify that every parking service should hold a fire truck, which is 75,000 pounds. And letter C, says that every parking space that's an accessible parking space must be built with either asphalt or concrete or brick pavers. We're not allowing the accessible parking spaces to be built out of gravel or grasscrete. We want to make sure that when someone that's in a wheelchair or with a walker, when they park their car, they don't have issues getting to their destination from that. So it's both the parking space, but also the walkway that will have to either be concrete or asphalt or brick pavers. Next. Here's some examples. I'll show you examples of these things built in wet climates, in dry climates, hot climates, and cold climates to show you that it can work anywhere and it can work here in Provo. I'll even show you examples of it in Provo existing. Here's a brick paver street in Annapolis, Maryland. You get lots of rain there. It goes through the street and to the soil beneath. Next. Here's a brick paver driveway in Provo. Even though it's not legal, people are doing it. There's already demand for it, and they're beautiful driveways, I think. Next. Here's another brick paver driveway in Provo. This one is in Edgemont. Again, really beautiful, and does just fine in Provo. Here's another brick paver driveway. This one's on Center Street downtown. Beautiful. I think it complements the home really well. Allows the water to infiltrate down into the soil beneath. Next. This is an example of a stabilized gravel parking lot. This is in Brooklyn, New York. This was built after Hurricane Sandy when it hit New York and flooded a lot. The city said, we need to depave much of what we have. And so they started encouraging people to build permeable parking lots like this. So that's what we see here. There's a gravel driveway in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which gets a lot more snow than we do. And people can do just fine with gravel parking lots there. Notice it's also not spilling off onto the sidewalk or not onto the street. There's a gravel driveway in St. George, hot and dry. Again, pretty clean between the street and the driveway. There's a gravel driveway in Provo. Looks beautiful, looks great, and it does just fine in the winter here as well. And an example of a grasscrete driveway. This is in California. They've chosen to use paver stones and grass. And one more. And then a colder climate grasscrete driveway in Canada. I've also seen these in Provo. I didn't include any pictures of them in Provo though. Okay, last slide.
That is the last slide.
That is the last one. Okay. Well, the last one would have had the exact language. I think, John, if you could pull up the exact language. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so what it would amend is this section that talks about how parking lots may be built already, and it just adds those options of brick pavers, stabilized gravel, etc. So any questions?
Thank you, Austin. Any questions, Mr. Fillmore?
To permeable driveways. I guess the only thing that popped into my head was a concern for if we ever had a hazardous waste spill, does that become more problematic if it doesn't stay on the surface of pavement? In the sense that the hazardous material then goes into the soil, much harder to reclaim, remediate.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've talked with Rob Hunter, and he has, if he didn't bring this to you already, he'll probably be bringing it to you soon. they have on a map well protection zones in Provo, areas where we draw the water, our drinking water from. And in those well protection zones, they will not allow for infiltration. So in those areas, if there were some sort of spill to be happening, it wouldn't end up in our water source.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for? All right, we'll open it up to public comment. I see one hand raised. This is phone number 8340.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Sam Ullman. I live down here in the Provo neighborhood, and I generally support this this idea. But I believe as part of it, each individual case should have an engineering exam or a signature. Obviously, the people that wrote this did some research on it, but asphalt is called asphalt cement in an engineering world. Just to pass that along. Also, it's almost impossible to use your wheelchair on a gravel road or a gravel parking lot or a stroller or a shopping cart or a bicycle, especially 3/4 inch gravel. And we're not talking about aggregate here. We're talking about gravel, so it doesn't, get muddy and whatnot. And gravel that has not been aggregated has a tendency to always be loose and always be impassable to the people that need a wheelchair, for instance. This is a great idea for some areas and for some applications, like where you want to park your boat or your motorhome in the winter, where you're not going to be driving over it. But anybody wants to go down to the wrecking yard and watch the mud ooze up through the gravel, you'd say, hey, maybe that's not the best idea. So it definitely needs a civil engineering sign off on it, and before it's approved for any commercial or even maybe perhaps residential. I just hate to see a grocery store where a mother can't push the grocery cart out and drag her stroller behind her because of the gravel. And it seems to make no distinction between applications from place to place.
All right, thank you, Mr. Oman. We have another comment from phone 1265.
Hi, this is Rob Hunter. I'm a Provo resident in the Sunset neighborhood, and I'm also the stormwater engineer. So hopefully the fact that I'm both can makes this the right time to comment. I was just listening in, but yeah, we have some of those items addressed from the previous caller. As y'all recall from just 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had the water quality, the larger water quality code added into our storm drainage manual. Some of those items are addressed in terms of places that it might not be appropriate to do permeable areas. But we felt, and I've been coordinating heavily with Austin and supportive of the way that it's drawn up. There are restrictions or things that need to be addressed that are addressed in the drainage manual, but in terms of the types of permeable pavements that can be put when it is appropriate, this seemed like the right way to do it is put the available types here where they were already addressed previously, just update it to include permeable pavements, and then we've got the restrictions and things that they need to address if they are doing either this type of facility or the other ones that we talked about, like rain gardens or bioswales, the things that they need to take a look at. And so those kind of things are covered. Areas that need to have ADA compliance for wheelchairs and making sure that the surfaces are appropriate for those standards have been addressed in terms of looking at our code as a whole. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other further comment from the public? I don't I don't see anybody called in. So we'll bring it back to the council for any further discussion. This is the first time this has been heard, so if any council member desires to consider this item again at the next council meeting, we can speak to that. Oh, Mr. Austin Taylor would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I just want to address the wheelchair concern. So the exact code that I sent John that you all looked over, it said that all accessible spaces and the walkways have to be built of brick pavers, asphalt, or concrete. So no one with a walker or wheelchair is going to be going across a gravel parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harding.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi to Mr. Ullman. It's good. I'm glad that he was able to call in and figure out the technology, and it kind of made this meeting feel a little bit more familiar to have him speak to us. So I wanted to say that, and then as well as I support this proposal.
Any other comments from the council? I want to echo that. I think this is really valuable and important that we do. So I'm grateful for your work on this, Austin, and others who've been involved. Any further discussion from the council? If not, this is an action item that is an implied motion. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote and do it by roll call. Let's see, I seem to have lost my ability to look at everybody. Hold on just one second. Okay, Mr. Shipley.
Yes.
Mr. Harding.
Yes.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes.
Ms. Ellsworth.
Yes.
Mr. Fillmore. You seem to be on mute.
There we go again. Yes.
Mr. Hoban.
Yes.
All right, and I will also vote yes. Did I get everyone? Just want to make sure. The voting is unanimous, and with that, we are done. We appreciate everybody's help from the staff again for making this happen and happen so smoothly. And we will, if there is no objection, counselors, you'll have to turn on your mic and speak up. Otherwise, we will now adjourn by unanimous consent. Oh, Cliff, you have a comment?
I just sent a message to you all in webinar chat, but let me just restate it for you. This was an interesting experiment for all of us. We've been practicing for a week. We hope you found the format useful and relatively easy. Would you please send me your comments tomorrow, good or bad, suggestions or complaints or whatever. We do want to refine how we do these meetings because we think we're going to be doing them for a while. And then one lesson we did learn along the way is that preparation before the meeting does help with various issues during the meeting. And on behalf of the staff, thank you for your participation and especially your patience tonight as we've worked through the various issues. And again, we had a really good support staff, and Karen and Elizabeth and Hannah and John, and I've worked very hard to get you here. So thank you.
Got a couple of comments, Mr. Harding.
Yeah, let me just, I think we need a round of applause for our staff. I think I've been hearing stories from across the country where municipalities and groups are trying to hold these public meetings online, and there's just some horror stories. I think this has gone off relatively without a hitch, far better than I think anyone could have expected, and I think that's just a tribute to the hard effort by our staff to run through everything they could to work out all of the wrinkles beforehand so that this meeting could go so quickly and so well.
Hear, hear, 3 cheers.
Ms. Ellsworth, did you have a comment?
Yeah, similarly, I thought it was a job well done by staff. They have a lot on their plate. I only wish that a 3-year-old had come bouncing in the back, like in that BBC interview.
You missed it then because I had my 22-year-old, 4-year-old sit on our meeting during leadership last week.
Yeah, that was good. Well, we'll look forward to moving forward as a community, and we're grateful for all of the help of our wonderful staff. So everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.